The stillness is a lie. The quiet in your veins is a cage you didn't know you were in. And now the lock is turning from the inside. As soon as Seol-Hwi was back in his room, he changed his clothes and sat down. He felt strange, tired, yet refreshed at the same time. Did we get through the blockage in your vessels? At first, he thought the energy would continue to linger in his body, but then he felt something hot moving through his body and enveloping him. The heat burned painfully as it went into his head, chest, and dantian. His vision began to warp as if he was in danger. It is also known as breaking through the gate of life and death. That was the purpose of this training, and it's unnecessary for you now. Jiakpa had held out a book, struggling to control his emotions. You have obtained the martial ghost walking method. Basically, this is the footwork of the Earth Demon's 4 Peaks demonic martial arts. It was further developed for the sake of the Hidden Truth Squad. Just as he said, this technique was in the Earth Demon's book. However, since this one was focused on martial arts, it only held information on evasive techniques. It didn't need any kind of sustainable footwork. In fact, this was the first time he'd been formally given footwork. The reason I'm not teaching you this is that I believe you will do well even without my teaching. You can reach the 7th level easily. Seol-Hwi noticed something while he was reminiscing. Mind reading, intermediate, up arrow, advanced. Mind reading had increased by 1 level and a blank list had appeared next to it. Seol-Hwi figured things would change once he reached the peak state. Martial arts, advanced, up arrow, perfect, imitation, up arrow, intermediate, imitation, up arrow, intermediate, footwork, up arrow, beginner. Learning a bunch of martial arts isn't always helpful. The experience had taught Seol-Hwi things he'd never thought of. Strong martial arts weren't necessarily good, and being strong didn't mean just learning martial arts. Realization was the root of martial arts. Training was important, but basic realization and understanding were a necessity. Only by understanding the true nature of martial arts can one reach a higher state. Seol-Hwi lied down in his bed. Seol-Hwi pondered the familiar phrase for a moment, but didn't feel a need and just went to sleep. Seol-Hwi got up early in the morning and went to the door. Take a mission, warrior training, walk around learning martial arts isn't an option. I guess I should take a mission. Earth Demon, 4th disciple of the Heavenly Demon. Hyukgu, leader of Hidden Truth Squad. Jiakpa, Hidden Truth Squad head instructor. Doctor who treated Seol-Hwi, servant who brought meals. Actually, he wanted to start with the missions, but he just didn't have the basics to pull it off. Shall we go with the Earth Demon? He ought to be able to make it work now that he was a peak Grand Master. Seol-Hwi proceeded with excitement. When he accepted, light flowed through his body. You are much stronger than before, however, there are things you still lack. You cannot carry out this mission at your current level. Come back when you have the correct qualifications. What? After the Earth Demon's brief reply, Seol-Hwi found himself back by the door. He looked around for a moment and then stepped up to the door. Seol-Hwi went for another mission, from the squad leader this time. You broke past the gate of life and death, I heard from the head of the education office. Incredible. But this is a bad time for the mission. Come back in a year. This is... Seol-Hwi was back in his room again. Should I choose the bottom one? He looked at the last mission, the weird one, servant who brought meals. Are you here? Huh, Seol-Hwi looked at the door towards the source of the weak voice. Can I come in? Seol-Hwi quickly adjusted. Come in. He introduced himself as No Sam. He was the one who always brought him meals, but he mainly served Sima Beacon. The reason he came even though it wasn't time for dinner was because he had something to say. His story went like this. One day, Sima Beacon had to attend to the vice leader of the sect for personal reasons. While the vice leader was away, he accidentally looked into the furnace and discovered a martial arts manual which hadn't been completely incinerated like the rest. He was afraid that if something happened to it, he'd be implicated. He didn't know what to do with it, so he ended up giving it to the people outside. Seol-Hwi cut him off. What's the problem? The problem is, the man who took the book suddenly disappeared. What? Disappeared? Now Seol-Hwi seriously considered No Sam's words. Disappear meant he didn't hide. The man had either left the sect or gone into the Central Plains. How can he run away from the people in our sect? I don't know. There's a chance he died, or the vice leader took care of it. No body has been found and no one came to me. It was Elder Beacon who came to the office. That made sense. The problem could easily be solved by chasing the target. Elder Beacon wants to find him, but he can't move, No Sam said. In any case, if the vice leader had a reason to burn the book, then he must be involved in the disappearance. That made sense as well. What if it was a trap by the vice sect leader? Seol-Hwi didn't know much about the power struggle within the sect, or about Elder Beacon's position, but he thought hard about it. So why tell me this? Elder Beacon is concerned it was one of his people. If so, they have to die, but the Elder doesn't have any people he can send. Instead, he wants someone with no presence, a person who won't make noise, who can move freely and isn't a known face. I went looking and you came here. Pretty words for a dark deed. The Elder was free from danger if he sent in a stranger. Someone who could move freely was also someone the sect didn't care about. And he wanted this man dead, even without knowing who he was. The way the mission had been delivered suggested Seol-Hwi didn't have a choice. What do I get if I bring him in? The most important question. They had to be offering something in addition to what the system would give him. Of course, No Sam said as if he'd been expecting it. Elder Beacon always pays his debts. Well, Seol-Hwi thought about it for a moment. Not bad, he nodded. Considering this was a task from an elder, the conditions didn't seem bad. Received a mission from servant No Sam. Mission, Mugi, head disciple of Elder Beacon, fled to Xianxia with a secret book. Capture him within a month. Upon success, Beacon's trust. Reward, Transfiguration book, sect leader's secret map, 1/4, so he's the head disciple. No Sam implied he was just some henchman, but it turned out he was actually a cherished disciple. In that case, it would be better to bring him in alive rather than dead. Seol-Hwi examined the rewards and paused. Transfiguration, meaning disguise. He'd heard that the sect had ways to change your face, but he didn't believe it. You'd have to change not just the face, but the skin, hair, and eyes. How would it be possible to create something like that from flesh and bone? Rumor had it, however, that there was a way. It was said to be limited and difficult to learn, but Seol-Hwi remembered people talking about it all the time. And the vice sect leader had it. I feel like there's something more to it than a book. A vice sect leader had to have plenty of secrets. If this book belonged to him, it had to be amazing. So, wait, Mugi, wasn't that name? A bit weird. The Elder's henchman, he's an offender, right? Yeah. Yes, crazy. Seol-Hwi wanted to cuss. An offender was handed a book about disguise. Of course, he ran away with it. He ran off and no one would be able to find him. How did you know? Seol-Hwi didn't bother to answer. No, Sam didn't need to know. Then can I leave right now? One more thing. What? The Elder asked me to bring someone to accompany you. He knows the paths so he can help you get out of the sect easily. He's trying to spy on me. Seol-Hwi was annoyed. Who? I'll bring them. Seol-Hwi's first impression of the person No Sam brought was too rough. It wasn't a bad thing, it was just the way people in the sect were. Even so, Seol-Hwi could tell he was serious. The forearms poking out of his sleeves were as thick as trees, and his face was pocked with burns and scars. The man was so tall Seol-Hwi's head only came up to his shoulders. For whatever reason, he was bald. Seol-Hwi was so intimidated he couldn't even reach for his sword. Seokdu Carpenter, health. 300,000 internal energy, 0 first-rate combat power, 9,000 special note, unknown developmental disability, so an idiot. Seol-Hwi's confidence returned. Despite looking like an experienced martial artist, he was a total beginner, no skill to speak of. Surprisingly, though, he was a first-rate warrior, the stage right before peak Grand Master. This man must have been through a lot, and his strong body must have served him well to be evaluated as a first-rate warrior. Seokdu, Seol-Hwi nodded. I hope we get along. There was no way this guy could spy on him. Presumably, Elder Beacon had only sent him to help. Right, Seokdu, how do we proceed? Seokdu grinned. I've been working in the first-line barrier construction at the entrance of the sect, so we can say we're going to find some good wood and walk out. Okay. Sounds good. Seokdu bowed his head to Seol-Hwi. He couldn't even look Seol-Hwi in the eyes. Moving to Xianxia, they were already on the road leading to Xianxia, one of the system's conveniences. We will arrive at the Great Bird Guest House soon. The wagon driver's voice floated through the fist-sized window. Seol-Hwi briefly thanked him and then checked the system windows. Will I go back to the usual room 1? Not long after he got on the wagon, he discovered a new feature in the window, return. It seemed he could instantly go back just like he moved here. How convenient. So, you mean? Seol-Hwi looked at Seokdu. You're saying we can catch the bastard no matter how hard he tries to hide? Seokdu nodded. Yes, I have known him since childhood. Even if he changed his face, he won't be able to change his habits and mannerisms. Well, speaking of which, he really deserves to die. Every day he told me I couldn't meet a woman because I was ugly, or that just looking at me made him feel dirty. Ah, I got that a lot too. Seol-Hwi shook his head. Seemed like the guy had been harassed a lot. The real question was, is it a sin to be a virgin? That bastard Jiok Mayung too was like this too. How badly did he torment Seol-Hwi? Just thinking about it made him angry. It didn't feel the anger would go away, so Seol-Hwi thought he might go and slap Jiok Mayung around once the mission was over. He'd be alive and well, now that Seol-Hwi was on a different life. The wagon came to a stop and the driver announced that they'd arrived. Seol-Hwi got down first and looked around. For a moment, he was speechless. He felt a strange, indescribable pleasure as he laid eyes on the crowds of people. A merchant hawking his goods, children playing in the corner, refreshments being sold, even the buildings lining the roads and vendors selling their vegetables. It's been almost 30 years. Seol-Hwi was born in a butcher's family. He stayed in the house at all times until his parents died when he was 10 years old and he had to take over the chores. The day they came, he was scampering and scrounging like a dog. Would you like to learn martial arts? Seol-Hwi was enchanted by their sweet words. He said yes, and that was how he entered the demonic sect. He didn't know that life there would be worse than the butcher's life. There, Seol-Hwi. Seol-Hwi looked up when Seokdu spoke. Right, he had work to do. After all, he would have to go back to the sect once the mission was done. Let's go see what we can get. Seol-Hwi spotted a large, 3-story guest house on the other side of the road and took Seokdu inside. The inside of the guest house was tense. The two sects here were prone to starting brawls. Interestingly, they were always fighting because of a woman. My lady, shouldn't they be stopped? Yeonji watched the fight grow with an anxious expression. Ju Seo and a friend sat down at a table between the two young lords of the sects. Things fell apart from there. Mi Yuksang, her admirer, had approached. Baishan sect is the best in Cheonggi? She had asked in a low voice. It's true, Mi Yuksang had boldly proclaimed. The Nine Paths sect is inferior, as the rumors said. That was 3 months ago. Ma Sangjun, the young lord of the Nine Paths sect, looked at Ju Seo and shouted. Dozens of men jumped up from their seats and the entire guest house froze. Didn't I tell you earlier that we're both in the same boat? Yeonji asked. I don't think that's the right expression to use here, Ju Seo replied. Why not? The two of us have the same problems, so we need to work together to get through it. Does it look like I have problems? It does in my eyes, he said. Ju Seo smiled at him. She really was beautiful enough to draw the attention of the two lords, big eyes and red lips, a slender neck and white jade-like skin wrapped in a silk robe, eyes that didn't blink even when the men were fighting. She was the granddaughter of the wealthiest man in Cheonggi. She ruled this land with her name alone. With her beauty added on top of that, there was no end to her suitors. I knew this day would come. Mi Yuksang wore a navy blue robe over his short, stout body. The Nine Paths sect had about 500 warriors. I've longed for this. A tall, skinny man in a blue robe shouted. I will not back down today like I did last time. The Baishan sect originated from a weapons merchant. His great-grandfather made a fortune by supplying weapons to the military and used it to establish a martial sect. He gathered power by uniting small sects. They had a similar number of warriors to the Nine Paths sect. Hundreds of warriors drew their weapons at once. I will show you the power of the Baishan sect. The Nine Paths is the best. Some of the audience quietly stayed to observe the situation. The others nervously retreated outside. People were screaming and egging the warriors on. There were even people looking in through the windows. Maybe there's too much attention, but it's been like this for 4 months. Ju Seo seemed unconcerned despite Yeonji's worried expression. They were cowards. They'd spent the last 4 months growling at each other instead of settling the matter, to say nothing of using swords. Ju Seo made to take a sip of her drink but paused. Something caught her eye. Hey, did you just eat 3 pieces of meat at once just now? There were 2 men in the guest house who didn't pay any attention to the fight. They just kept munching. What Ju Seo eavesdropped of their conversation was amazing. Didn't I tell you? Haha, it's my first time eating such tender meat. What? You wrapped 3 pieces in vegetables, didn't you? Did I do that even though I'm the same as you? Ah, I made a big mistake. It was a childish conversation, but rather compelling. Casually chatting while swords were bared was a fun idea. Eventually, one of the warriors tried a surprise attack. He threw something and it landed. Where the men were eating. Huh! Seol-Hwi and Seok-du ordered a bunch of food as soon as they were in the guest house. They didn't even bother speaking to each other for a while, they just ate, even with all the commotion. They just ate and ate like madmen, and the piles of food on the table kept disappearing. Hey! Seol-Hwi was the first to speak. Did you just eat 3 pieces of meat at once just now? No. Seok-du's expression stiffened, and he hastily made an excuse, but he was already breaking into a cold sweat. In the end, he had no choice but to confess. I did. Think before you do that again? Seol-Hwi forgave him because it was a new experience for both of them, and because he was stuffing his face, too. Do you have any money? Seol-Hwi had no trust in his eyes. Seok-du was in a bind again. I used all my money to pay for the carriage. He felt Seol-Hwi's eyes radiate killing intent. I'll take care of it. Right. Suddenly, they were interrupted. The other guests had gotten into a fight and thrown something at them, but Seok-du handily caught the blade. Seok-du looked at Seol-Hwi. Are you done eating? Unfortunately, this is it. Seol-Hwi nodded and heaved a sigh. I understand. Seok-du waited for Seol-Hwi to put down his chopsticks before he acted. The first thing he did was scream. Ah! He didn't stop there. Seok-du raised a hand and started to beat it against the table, scattering food and plates everywhere. I'm dead. My hand is so fucked. Once he had everyone's attention, Seok-du leapt up with the weapon in his hand. Who was it? Which bastard? The guest house went dead quiet. They seemed to exchange glances, and then one of the 9 Paths warriors stepped forwards. Don't get involved in someone else's fight. The warrior lifted his knife threateningly, but then his expression changed. Seok-du's fist came flying at him like a lightning bolt, and the man got launched backwards. He slammed into the wall and passed out. I'll ask again, who threw this? Seok-du walked around, but no one spoke. The way he moved escaped the realm of common sense. You! Everyone went stiff. No, Mi Yuksang trembled. He had an eye for the strong, and he knew there was no place for something like self-esteem in front of this intimidating presence. He'd never felt anything like this in his life. Then is it you? Seok-du turned to Ma Sang-jun of the Baishan sect. He didn't react much differently. Not me either. Really, you rats. Seok-du stomped, shaking the entire guest house. Everyone shied away. Seok-du suddenly grabbed Ma Sang-jun and Ma Yuksang by their hair. The other warriors were shaken and backed away. You two listen carefully to what I'm saying. Seok-du brought them close. You will pay for my food. And since you broke the nice mood, you should compensate me for it. In return, I won't ask why you did it. Understand? Yes. Yep. Both men, desperate to survive, answered right away. Seok-du, satisfied, let go of their heads. Seok-du went back to his seat and no one followed him. The strange force this giant man radiated was enough to make people know they were powerless. I took care of it. Seok-du bowed his head. Seol-Hwi looked around calmly and nodded. Let's go. He was about to stand up when a woman they didn't know sat down on the other side of the table. Nice to meet you. Seol-Hwi looked up. Ju Soa, granddaughter of villas and lodging holder, health. 80/80 internal energy. 0/0 insignificant numbers, but that wasn't the reason Seol-Hwi gave her his attention. Special note. Mission 2, Warrior Training. He roughly understood it. If he had 2 missions, he wouldn't get the second one right away. Perhaps it meant that he had to make a choice, train here, and then take the mission. Who are you? Seok-du pursued his curiosity while Seol-Hwi was lost in thought. Yes, right, hehe. Seol-Hwi frowned. Hehe, did he hear that right? You're really cool. I haven't had a chance to see someone like that in a long time. Oh, it's nothing, I'm pretty average. Still, you seem better than the swordsman here. Is that so, hehe? Seol-Hwi did not mishear. He obviously said, hehe. Seol-Hwi was beginning to understand why Seok-du got harassed so much. Watching the blush climb up his cheeks made Seol-Hwi want to slap him, too. But who are you? Oh, sorry for the late introduction. I am Ju Soa, the granddaughter of the head of the villa's housing here. There's no one who doesn't know me here if you'll let me brag a little. Why would the granddaughter come here? Seol-Hwi asked. It isn't anything stange. Ju Soa stiffened, but her expression didn't crack. Rather, she crossed her legs and smiled bashfully. I'm curious about warriors like you. I want to know more about such people. We aren't as good as you think. The more talented a person is, the more humble they are. Such a pretty, good-natured woman. Seol-Hwi was intrigued by her kindness and beauty. You don't seem like someone from around here. Ju Soa peeked at him through her eyelashes. Where are you from? It's rather far from here. From the clothes and the way you speak, I don't think it's Jianghu. Are you from Zhejiang? Zhejiang was thousands of li from the southernmost tip of Chenggi, far, far away from the sect. It seemed she didn't expect them to be from the sect. Something like that. But enough of that, Seol-Hwi said, changing the subject. We've been wandering for a while, so can you hear me out? Seokdu pulled up a chair and sat down. The brawlers and their audience had left the guest house, leaving it silent. A request right off the bat. Well, sounds good. Shall we hear what you have to say? He was trying to deflect her from digging into their origins, but it felt like she was controlling the conversation. She was definitely an unusual woman. As expected from the wealthy, she was good at dealing with people. There is someone we need to catch, but we aren't familiar with this place. I'm sure a wealthy family like yours has some good connections. Would you mind looking into it? Do you have any information about this person? Nothing of that sort. It wouldn't help much because he disguises his face with makeup. The thing is, he uses demonic martial arts and he's crazy about women. Her eyes widened much as expected. Although this place was far from the demonic sect, its name inspired the same fear. He uses demonic martial arts, but he also has the ability to hide it. In fact, you wouldn't be able to tell until he used them. Mugi would have been wary of people from the demonic sect coming after him and taken appropriate precautions. Then maybe? No. Seol-Hwi shook his head. He had no need to give her any hints. Nothing would change. Seokdu was just a worker who never learned cultivation, and Seol-Hwi had been able to control the demonic energy within him as soon as he reached the peak level. Only someone stronger than him would be able to tell. All right, what will the warrior do for me? Heh, Seokdu interrupted. I can do anything the lady want. Seol-Hwi slammed his head against the table. If you giggle one more time, I swear. Sorry. Seokdu clapped his hand over his mouth and looked away. At least he listened. Lady, yes, warrior, I think you're misunderstanding something. Ju-so nodded. You could call it a request, but it's really a proposal. Think, a devious, evil man is caught by a warrior connected to the lady of the villas. Wouldn't that be enough? The woman's expression subtly shifted. She must have figured something out, but she just looked cute to Seol-Hwi. Even if he'd barely scraped by as the leader of a half-rate squad, Seol-Hwi had spent most of his life rubbing shoulders with the most atrocious people. He could read her like a book. Well, if you don't like it, we can ask someone else. I'll help you. Ju-so agreed more easily than he expected. Then I need two more things, Seol-Hwi added. A comfortable place to rest and food to fill our stomachs. Is that all? Seol-Hwi gave her a questioning look. I'll give you useful information, a map of the area, places you should keep an eye on. I will spare on effort to support you. Ju-so spoke so boldly that Seol-Hwi was almost a little embarrassed. Instead, after you catch him, please stop by my home again. She didn't explain further, but Seol-Hwi could guess why. It probably had to do with the fact that all of the crimes were against women. Still, the request clearly showed that she was no normal woman. That's my condition. I accept. Seol-Hwi and Seokdu followed Ju-so. They passed through the enormous main gate, and it still took quite a while to reach the guest room. A day later, they learned that she really was the richest person here, as Seol-Hwi expected. She already looked the part, but the sprawling manor they arrived at and the horses they rode proved it. Fortunately, the guest room wasn't too far, so Seol-Hwi and Seokdu were able to rest. But Seokdu wouldn't leave him alone. What's the deal with this rice bowl? Seokdu tilted his head as he examined the porcelain in the cabinet. Why is it so glamorous? Seol-Hwi looked up at the Sankai one. They were different from the ones the Supreme Pavilion Lord had in his office. Ignorant bastard. Oh, it looks like real leather? Seol-Hwi squeezed his eyes shut when Seokdu started rubbing the carpet. He started gathering his energy. If Seokdu said one more thing, Seol-Hwi was going to beat him. Is there water coming out of there? What? In spite of himself, Seol-Hwi couldn't ignore that question. Water coming into the room, it didn't make any sense. Ooh, it is real. Seol-Hwi stared at it, shocked. As Seokdu had said, there was a fixture in the room that supplied clean water. Ju-so waited in front of the door. Her grandfather had arrived after a month's absence. Usually people would talk about family, but her grandfather only spoke about business and more unpleasant things. A servant waved her in. I'm coming in. Ju-so braced herself and advanced along the golden carpet leading to the entrance. The room was as spacious as a palace. A gorgeous ceiling and walls, decorations and precious metals festooned across the room. In the center was an old man sitting in a rosewood chair, smoking tobacco. He had gray hair and a warm expression. "My granddaughter is here." His name was Ju Wanjil, the owner of villas and lodgings in this place. Anywhere he went in Chenggi, people would stop to greet him. "Come sit here." "Yes, grandfather." Ju So-I seated herself in the chair with a dignified posture. The way she was speaking was completely different from how she spoke to Seol-Hwi. "Right." Ju Wanjil settled into his seat and smiled. "I heard from the people at home that you go in the cities often these days. I enjoy seeing people and talking to them rather than staying in this cramped place. I understand your feelings, but even so, you need to understand that you cannot bring idiots into your home. There are many things you choose to ignore, but you can't ignore this." It had only been an hour since she'd come back, but it seemed he'd already heard. "This grandfather has lived this long. He prides himself on not spreading rumors, but people always whisper around us. You need to be cautious of them at all times." "I will keep that in mind." Ju Wanjil let out a puff of smoke. Ju So had a gut feeling that her grandfather was going to talk about something else. That was what he usually did. "Next year will be your coming of age." This was nothing new to her. She knew what to say right away. "Right. I am still of an age where I need worldly experience." "Ha ha, wouldn't a good husband double the experience you get?" Orchids grow fine in the open field, even though they're difficult to raise in a greenhouse. For girls my age, going out and conversing with people is helpful. But a flower like a chrysanthemum needs a human's care. It is human nature to investigate things, just like how grandfather knows the taste of alcohol but checks it each time. "Ha ha ha, you," Ju Wanjil smiled. He knew she would try to slip out of the marriage talks. She was his granddaughter, after all. "I'll be blunt. You ought to be prepared. Grandfather. Young Lord Zhang is descended from a powerful family from Mount Hua. He is upright and faithful. Even you can't object, right? But I have heard that he has created many issues because he blindly rushes into things. Besides, I haven't heard that he's interested in women." "Ho ho ho." Ju Wanjil smiled at his granddaughter's stiff expression. He let the last of his tobacco burn out and then put the butt on the table. "I don't want to say this, but a woman cannot have heroic hobbies, only hobbies that do no harm and don't give us a bad name." "But grandfather, did you bring in a warrior like you said?" "Well," Ju So abruptly recalled that she'd gotten into an argument with her family. They insisted that they needed a warrior like young Lord Zheng in the family. Ju So was only arguing to be rebellious, but she wasn't able to offer a master or an expert that would take his place. She did say, however, that whoever she brought would be able to subdue Zheng. "So," Ju Wanjil continued in a serious tone, "our goal was to continue to stay in Chenggi, was it not? Your mother's death was because we had no power." Ju So remained silent. "You need to gather power more than anyone else. Money is important, but power is more important. Young Lord Zheng may have flaws in his character, but everyone knows how strong he is." Zheng was famous for his martial arts, even within the Mount Hua sect. Despite not being an official disciple, they called him the Plum Blossom Swordsman. "That is why I brought him." "Huh. Who?" He turned to the servant standing at the side. "Where is he?" "He is resting." "Grandfather," Ju Wanjil ignored her and stood up. "Come on, let's go see him."